right, welcome back to World Civilizations with me, Mrs. Ward. So, right, we left off last time with you guys working on your World War II projects. If you have not gotten those to me yet, please make sure that you either take a picture and email it to me or submit what you have into Canvas as soon as possible. I'm going to be submitting grades soon, so that would be great. Today, let me pull this up real quick, sorry. Today, we're going to be looking at World War II. It's mostly going to be what's leading up to World War II as a more kind of cohesive, bringing everything together kind of a thing. So you might have to think back, right, from before we started the project, but hopefully this is going to bring it together and so that you can understand how your project fit into kind of the whole range of things that's going on at the time. So World War II, this is part 1, tomorrow or next time. So there's going to be a part 2 that will be up. That will talk more about like the war specifically, and most of your topics will like briefly come up. So we have some essential questions. So number 1, what led to new problems in the years after World War? Oh, that should be World War I. Oops, sorry guys. So what led to new problems in the years after World War I? And then what did the new totalitarian governments look like? Also, if you want to write these down, please just pause the video. Normally, right, when I'm teaching class, I give you guys a couple minutes to write everything down, but I'd like to just get through this a lot faster. So if you need to pause, just pause the video. I'll also have these slides up on Canvas so you can click through them later as well. Essential question number 3, how did Stalin gain and maintain power in the USSR? And number 4, how did Hitler build a Nazi state? So, right, we're going back in time a little bit from, right, where your World War II projects were. So World War I has ended. So our, leaders, they decide to get together. January 1919. We have 27 victorious allied nations that send representatives. They meet in Paris, and they will sign a treaty called the Treaty of Versailles. There's a bunch of treaties of Versailles, so it gets really confusing, but, right, so they're meeting, Paris, Treaty of Versailles. A big part of this is going to be war reparations on Germany. So a lot of these countries, these allied nations, right, like France and Great Britain and Russia, right, so they're pretty mad at Germany, right, so they want reparations, which means they want payback. They want Germany to literally pay them money to kind of make amends for the war, right, to pay them back, help pay for the war that way. Germany doesn't have any say in this, right, so they get the bad deal, right? So war reparations is like paying a country money when you're like the loser of the war and you pay it to the winners of the war. Our League of Nations is also going to be created around this time. So a lot of nations, right, they're unhappy with that Treaty of Versailles. They're unhappy with the whole peace settlement at the end of World War I. They're really worried that, more conflicts will arise. And so they actually take the advice of our President Woodrow Wilson and create a group called the League of Nations. So you have all these countries that have joined together. Their whole goal is peace. And what's really interesting is even though Woodrow Wilson was like a big pusher for this, the United States actually does not join the League of Nations. But the League of Nations does create, a lot of ally systems within it, right, that will play into World War II. Right, so Germany Treaty of Versailles, they have to pay all this money to like France and England and all that. And so the German government, they decide to just print more money. So they mainly will pay the salaries of like government officials, as well as trying to pay the other countries just by printing more paper money. And I don't know how much you guys know about like economics, but that creates crazy inflation. And so the worth of their money is going to drop crazy amounts. It actually gets to the point where it's a term we call like hyperinflation. It's like super, super bad. So in 1914, for example, so 4.2 German marks, which is like the currency that they had. So 4.2 German marks was about equivalent of $1 US, right? In 1923, 4.2 trillion German marks equaled $1 US. So as you can tell, like, right, so the US dollar in this scenario, right, it's $1, right, same amount. But their money has dropped in value, so much. During this time, right, between the wars, we also have the Great Depression. The Great Depression will impact Germany, which was already having a hard time because they're trying to pay back, those war reparations. And it will also impact, of course, like the United States. We have the Dust Bowl, all that kind of stuff. But the Great Depression will also impact, like, Great Britain, France, Russia, right? It hits everywhere. It's a global kind of thing. So I wanted to focus on France, especially. So France, we know, they always have political chaos, right? So going into this Great Depression is going to cause France to experience another kind of political chaos for a little while. We're going to see lots of leftist parties, so those are like communist parties and socialist parties that will create what we call the Popular Front. So these leftist parties, they come together, they create the Popular Front, and they become really, really popular. So a lot of people are like, oh no, this is a great idea, right? We have so much unemployment. These parties want to give people like more hours, more benefits. They think it's really great. So one of the things that they create is a system called collective bargaining. So collective bargaining is where you have unions that negotiate wages and hours with the government. So this is something that we still have like today. There's systems of this today. For example, with like public schools, so some teachers have like the option that they can join the union, right, for teachers, and the union officials go and they talk with state officials to try and get like better wages, better hours, better benefits, stuff like that. Because of this collective bargaining, France actually creates a 40-hour work week. They actually create a like national minimum wage as well, which is pretty revolutionary for the time. So going back to those essential questions, right? So what led to new problems in the years after World War I? I fixed it there. So right after World War I, Germany has to pay all this money. We have the Great Depression. Not a lot of people are happy with the treaties. We're creating all these new alliances with the League of Nations, right? Which gets some people kind of nervous. And then number two, we haven't quite gotten to yet. What did the new totalitarian governments look like? So that's what we're going to get to next, with the rise of dictators. So, right, the year's 1939. And in 1939, there were only two major European countries that were democratic, meaning that they had like voting and they elected like officials. So the only two were France and Great Britain. We saw other countries like Italy, the Soviet Union, and Germany, which will adopt dictatorships, right? So regimes with dictators, okay? So their governments will have a dictator, right, who runs the government. So it's one person running the government. Usually they're taking power by force, but not always. Totalitarian. So in a totalitarian government or totalitarian country, the government aims to control the political, economic, social, intellectual, and cultural lives of its citizens. So really, like who you can hang out with, what schools you go to, how much money you can make, where you live, right? Lots of stuff with the culture. So it's a total control of their citizens' lives, right? Total, totalitarian, total. You see the word total up in there. This is led by a single leader, right? So usually you have a dictatorship, or we see like a single party. So you could say like the Communist Party, right? The Fascist Party, stuff like that. But we'll see the Nazi Party. So first we'll look at Italy. So we have fascism in Italy. So Mussolini will set up the first European fascist movement. He sets it up in Italy. So he creates what's known as the League of Combat, the Fascio di Combattimento. This is where fascism gets its name, right? So that fasciso in there. Fascism, so what it is, right? So what they do in fascism is they glorify the country over the individual. So they emphasize the need for a strong central government led by a strong dictator, right? All that kind of stuff. The government controls the people, and then if there's any opposition, they get rid of the opposition. So, right, what do the new totalitarian governments look like, right? Total control of the people. Usually they'll have dictatorships. It's controlling your social life. It's controlling intellectual stuff. It's controlling cultural stuff, right? A lot of elements of people's lives. Number 3, how did Stalin gain and maintain power in the USSR? Okay, so we're looking at Russia here for a second. So March of 1921, we had Lenin. Lenin will abandon war communism in favor of his new economic policy. Part of that's because they're seeing an economic downturn after the end of World War I. And so they start to freak out, and they don't want to go into an economic crisis, and so they put this new policy in place. And it ultimately saves Russia. 1922, Lenin formally creates the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, also known to probably most of you as the USSR. So that's what USSR stands for. And right, Lenin's in charge until he dies in 1924. So then it's a big debate, right? Who's next? Trotsky has been, right, fighting Lenin. Lots of people know who he is. And then we have this other guy, Joseph Stalin. And Joseph Stalin gets control of the Communist Party, right? The people love him. He gets in control. By 1926, Stalin becomes the dictator of the USSR. 1927, Trotsky will actually leave, end up in Mexico, and in 1940, he'll be murdered in Mexico. And there's a lot of historians tend to look at that and maybe say, like, maybe Stalin sent someone to kill him, maybe not, maybe it was just, a scary time kind of thing. But anyway, kind of interesting with that. Joseph Stalin, 1928, he's going to launch what's known as his 5-year plan. It's an economic plan, and this is like the first 5-year plan. So the first one, it focuses on the production of military and capital goods. Capital goods are things like machinery that are used to make other goods. So really, his whole focus was to build up industry and build factories, right? So he's building factories rather than building specific goods so much. So the plan will actually quadruple the production of heavy machinery and oil production, which will really jumpstart their economy, while the rest of the world is kind of suffering a little bit as far as their money and unemployment and economy go. Switching gears a little bit to Spain this time. So we have General Francisco Franco. He'll lead a revolt against the goose. He'll lead a revolt against the democratic government in 1936. Germany and Italy will end up aiding Franco. The Civil War will come to an end when Franco's forces captured Madrid in 1939. Franco will be set up as the dictator, and he'll be in power until his death in 1975. This is something that, happens fairly quick, right? 1936 to 1939, but then will last a long time. I want to show you guys this. So this is a mural made by Pablo Picasso. It's called Guernica. I'm probably saying that wrong. I would say Guernica? Okay. Guernica. Yeah, it's the name of a town. So it's a mural immortalizing the horrible destruction of the city of Guernica in April of 1937. There's actually lots of stuff in it about silencing the press and silencing the voices of the people, because a lot of the events that happened in the Spanish Civil War were kind of just swept under the rug. No one really talked about it. And so Pablo Picasso painted this as kind of hey, no, it was a terrible thing. People need to remember it to understand it. And all that kind of stuff. So how does Stalin gain and maintain power in the USSR? Right? Take a second, make sure you understand that. If not, go back in my video, re-listen to it, think about that. Then number 4, how did Hitler build a Nazi state? And in this scenario, the term state means country, just for reference. So Hitler in Nazi Germany. This is really Hitler's kind of rise to power. So Adolf Hitler, he was born in Austria in 1889. He actually failed school, wasn't really good at school, and so he decided to become an artist. He learned a lot of stuff, but when he went to the academy to be accepted into art school, they rejected him in Vienna in Austria. He ends up going and fighting in World War I, and then afterwards he's going to start to get more political. He'll join the German Workers' Party, and then he'll end up rising through their ranks and taking control of that political party by 1921. The German Workers' Party will be renamed to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, which you guys know is Nazi for short, but is originally the German Workers' Party. Hitler will stage an armed uprising in Munich. That's a city in Germany. It will actually fail, and he'll be sentenced to prison. While he's in prison, he has a lot of time to himself. He'll end up writing a book known as Mein Kampf. In this book, there is a lot of racism and a lot of really radical ideas of what he thinks that the government should do, what they should do culturally, and all sorts of stuff. We'll see lots of anti-Semitism in there as well, and really just pretty radical writing. But he writes it in prison. When he gets out of prison, they start printing these books a lot more. 1933, Hitler gets out of prison, and while he was in prison, he decided rather than trying to take over the government by force, he's going to do it through legal ways and just gain popularity. So, 1933, he gets out of prison. He's actually going to take legal seizure. He's going to take over the government legally. He became a dictator that was appointed by the parliament. That would be if the House of Representatives elected a dictator, kind of a thing, right? So he's appointed by the parliament, he's appointed by the people. He's actually super popular, even though a lot of his ideas were really radical, right? In one idea that was in Mein Kampf that he really is going to push during this time is he wanted an Aryan radical state that would dominate the world. So he wants a country dominated by this race, right, the Aryans, which is people who speak Indo-European languages, right? They're white, light tone, light skin, right? All that kind of stuff. He wants them to dominate the world. So our anti-Semitism, our anti-Semitic policies So the Nazi Party is going to reflect some of the same beliefs as Adolf Hitler, so really don't like the Jews, right? So in 1935, with Hitler in power, right, they're going to make a law forcing Jews to wear yellow stars of David. They actually strip them of their German citizenship. So they say, like, you're not even a German citizen anymore, and you have to wear this thing, and you don't have rights here. And we start to see, like, an increase of, like, essentially, like, racism, right, going on there. This is during the time as well that we'll start to see concentration camps being built and people start being sent to, like, concentration camps. During this time we also have the Kristallnacht, which is the Night of Shattered Glass. That's, like, the translation from German. This happens on November 9th in 1938. During this time the Nazis, during the night, right, of that night, Nazis they burn down a bunch of synagogues, which are, like, Jewish churches, and they'll destroy 7,000 Jewish businesses. 30,000 Jewish males will be arrested during that night alone and be sent to concentration camps. So really, it's just like, it's like, okay, yeah, we're losing our rights, and then all of a sudden, right, there's this essentially huge attack on the people. Okay. Do I in there? Am I in there? Oh, yep. All right. So next, Lucy. No. Sorry, guys. All right. So next time, we'll talk about the Holocaust a little bit more. Lucy, come on. Come here. Okay. So next time we'll talk about the Holocaust a little bit more and look at that. You guys have an assignment that goes along with today. So you find that by going into Canvas, right? Going to our class. And then if you go to modules, right, we're in Unit 7. And it's going to be this 7.1 assignment and attendance, World War II Part 1. And it's a quiz. And you should be able to take it on your phones. It's open book and open note. The questions come from my slideshow presentation. You can also read the same stuff in your textbooks, or I have the readings up on Canvas on that, if you go back to modules. The assignment needs to be completed the day that you have my class. If you have my class on A day, it needs to be completed by midnight on that A day. Or if you have me on B day, it'll be midnight on B day. For it to count for attendance. And even if you don't get it turned in, right, on the right day, still turn it in so I can give you some points. Just know it won't count towards attendance in this class. All right, and then if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, please just reach out to me, email me, message me through Canvas, all that kind of stuff. Have a great day, guys.